this expression translates into standard notation this way. And we see here that the denominator is equal to 0 if x equals 2. What's wrong with that? Well, division by 0 is undefined. So x equals 2 doesn't work here. You can't count to whatever x plus 3 is. Well, if x is equal to 2, that would be 5. You'd have 5 over 0. You can't divide 5 by 0 because you can't count to 5 by zeros. Okay, so division by 0 being undefined, the value x equals 2 doesn't work in this expression. This expression, people saw right away that x equals 4 doesn't work because, of course, if x equals 4, x squared minus 16 is 0. Same thing over here. You can't have division by 0. People didn't seem to pick up right away in the fact that x equals negative 4 has the same characteristic, because if you square negative 4, you again get 16, so that negative 4 quantity squared minus 16 is indeed 0. Now the expression square root of x squared minus 16, which isn't on your handout, it isn't on our document, but I threw this in. Okay, the problem with the square root is that there's some numbers that aren't going to work for this. Okay, for example, if you put x equal 1 into this expression, you get 1 squared minus 16. Well, it's easy to see that that gives you negative 15. And you can't do the square root of negative 15 because the square root is the number, the square root of negative 15 would be the number which multiplied by itself would give you negative 15. There's no number that you can multiply by itself to get negative 15, because if that number was positive, then squaring it would give you a positive. But if that number was negative, the number that you would square to get negative 15, if it was negative, you would still have to square it. Multiplied by itself, you'd have the product of two negatives, which would still be positive. So you can't square any number, any real number, and get negative 15. So x equals 1 would give you negative 15 under the radical, but you can't take the square root of a negative. Okay. Similarly, 2 and 3 wouldn't work. In both cases, if x is 2, you would get negative 12 here. If x is 3, you'd have negative 7. And that's not going to work. Now, x equals 4 will work. 4 squared minus 16 gives you 0. And finally, you're out of the negatives, and you have the number 0. And you can express the square root of 0. It's just 0, since 0 squared is 0. And then if x equals 5, of course, you get 25 minus 16, which is 9. And the square root of 9 would be 3. And the rest of these numbers from 4 on up would work just fine. Now, if you go into the negative numbers, well, negative 3, for example. Negative 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 16, negative 7. You still have a negative, and negative 3 isn't going to work. Negative 4 does work. You square negative 4, you get 16, gives you 0. Same thing 4 does. You have this symmetry between squaring the negative and squaring the positive numbers. You get the same result if you square a negative number, the negative of any positive number. So if you square negative 4, again, you get 16. It's going to give you 0. Okay, square negative 5, you get 25. 25 minus 16, etc., is 9. You take the square root of that. And any number from negative 4 on in the negative direction. So we conclude that any x value that works here has to be greater than or equal to 4 or less than or equal to negative 4. And that we're then going to have to exclude any number between negative 4 and 4, not including the negative 4 and the 4.